The idea, insight, or secret you need for massive impact is just moments away. It's time to claim your career crown. The podcast where business owners and entrepreneurs share the keys to the kingdom to help you open the vault to your greater success.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our wonderful reoccurring guest, Kevin Lombardo. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can improve mental health and wellness in the workplace. Prioritizing mental health and wellness fosters a positive work culture, leading to greater employee engagement and loyalty. If you get a ton of value in this episode, I would invite you to subscribe because it costs nothing to subscribe. Kevin is the president and CEO of DORN Companies. He drives workplace safety and ergonomic excellence across Fortune 500 manufacturers, airlines, aerospace, service industries, and municipalities. Pioneering on-site and virtual solutions that significantly reduce ergonomic-related injuries, Kevin and his team consistently deliver annual savings exceeding $10 million to their valued clients while achieving a remarkable 50+% reduction in injuries. This equates to an impressive 500% plus annual ROI. So, as always, Kevin, that is so impressive. And I'm really glad to have you here today to talk about this important topic.
Oh, glad to be here, Lynn. Thank you for inviting me back.
Well, let's really talk about what inspired you with DORN as you got involved and you're evolving to really focus on improving mental health and wellness in the workplace.
Oh, good question. So when I joined DORN, actually, it's almost 9 years now. Actually, it'll be 9 years in August. But when I joined DORN, and I started to take a look at the competitive landscape and start looking at what's going on, wanted to figure out what was going to distinguish ourselves, because everybody in the competitive environment, on paper, we all do the same thing. So, we all have kind of one or two core competencies, and we add a bunch of stuff around it, and we're all kind of doing the same thing, but different things, right? So I said, what's going to really distinguish us? And so it took me probably 6-7 months to kind of figure that out. And where we landed was on NIOSH's total worker health concept. NIOSH, which is a part of OSHA, really is an organization that's been funded to help enhance and improve the overall health and safety of employers and employees around the country. And it just rang true to me, because the reality of it is it's more of a holistic view. It's not a hey, here's a structured approach. And yes, they have a structured approach to how they support companies going through things, but the concept of holistic approach to overall well-being and safety, injury prevention, just rang true. So we adopted NIOSH's total worker health as our core belief system. It drives everything we do. And when you start thinking about things like mental health and wellness beyond, I speak a lot about mental health and wellness on ergonomic risk, because we are in the injury prevention space. So what's that impact? So it really rang true as a way to tie this all together. And so really that NIOSH total worker health is what really resonated and really started us thinking down the road of those impacts of mental health and wellness, those impacts of when COVID came around, 40 million people lost their jobs, whether it was for a day, a week, a month, permanently. That impact had such a catastrophic effect on the economy, on people's mental health and wellness, food insecurity, rent insecurity, all those things that came about. A lot of them are actually still there in society. Maybe we didn't look too closely as others, before COVID, but it really raised it up to the top. So that NIOSH total worker health really helped us through that process during COVID to start thinking about what are those impacts? Because people going to work or working remotely or even going into the office or into the plant while their kid was home taking school virtually, while maybe their next door neighbor lost their job or maybe the next door neighbor passed away, all those things really started to bubble up. And so we just looked at it and said, how do we understand those impacts and how can we help those impacts? So it started early on with just discovering NIOSH and the total worker health, but it really came into focus during the COVID years of, what's that real impact? In fact, I speak a number of times a year. Sometimes I'll speak on the impact of mental health and wellness on ergonomic risk. I've been speaking this year on 4 to 5 generations working together and the impact that has on safety programs, wellness programs, because all of the various generations have different ways that they view work-life balance. They have different views. They have different ways that they absorb information, that they learn. So how do organizations have to keep up and keep going and modify what they do and how they do it, even if the message is the same? Don't hurt yourself, or stuff like that. So it started way back in 17 and 18, but really probably accelerated itself and evolved itself during COVID.
All right. Well, from a high level view, I mean, where do you start to improve mental health and wellness in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. Listen, make it a safe place for people to talk about it. The story that I tell a lot, there's this woman named Maddie. She doesn't work for a client, never met her. It's just a story that I've seen. She worked for a software company in Silicon Valley, and on a Wednesday, she wrote a note to the entire organization, including the CEO, said, "I'm taking Thursday and Friday as mental health days. And when I speak about this, I'll stop and say, okay, how many people out here, your organizations would, not you individually, your organizations would cringe if they saw an email that said, I'm taking the next 2 days as mental health days?" You get a couple people raising their hand, but most people. And I said, look, honestly, 25 years ago, I would have cringed if I saw that email. But and what I liked about it was the story is that the CEO hit reply all and wrote back, said, "Maddie, thank you. Please take care of yourself because we need you Monday. We're launching Project X, and we need you fully here and part of the team." So you have to create the space where people can talk about it, number one. Two, you have to bring awareness. And, some of the things that we talk about with clients or prospects is, mental health and wellness awareness training is very, very important. You're not trying to make supervisors diagnostic experts. But if Joe, who's happy-go-lucky every single day of his life at work, all of a sudden is starting to snap at people and stuff, there's things going on, right?
Yeah.
And maybe just going up to Joe and say, "Hey, what's cooking?" Or, "You know what? Go take a 10-minute break." It's not going to destroy production to send somebody to take a 10-minute break to cool down. But recognizing and training people, especially your supervisors and managers, to identify potential issues that might be arising, because you never know if that little intervention saves something else, saved Joe, saved a potential workplace violence issue, stuff like that. I mean, a couple of stories last year, both of these happened last year. We have a client in Arizona. On a Saturday, somebody came in with a baseball bat and in the cafeteria beat to death one of his colleagues.
Oh.
Don't know the backstory behind it. I don't get too engaged in stuff like that. And, it was catastrophic. They shut down the facility for 2 weeks because they had to figure out how to help people recover. And then we have a client here in Boulder, Colorado, that, again, a guy that was always known as happy-go-lucky was going through a very divisive divorce and custody battle, ended up committing suicide. Recognizing when somebody is having an issue, at least you could steer them towards resources. You could say, go take a break. You could say, you could bring in other support to help. So I think it's important that there's training. In fact, Dorn sponsors a group called Hope. Don't ask me what it stands for, but there's a woman here in Colorado, Dr. Sally, that she partners with companies, a year-long program to certify them on identification of risk of suicide in the workplace. And so we're proud to sponsor Dr. Sally because it brings another layer of education of from senior management all the way through the ranks of getting an organization to understand that suicide in the workplace is an issue, and how are we going to educate people and address identification of issues and stuff like that. And so that's where we're going as a company. We're not diagnostic experts and stuff like that, but we have programs of mental health awareness. We have programs that we look at our data. We look at a lot of data. Our programs usually get like a 77% of the people tell us they have reduced stress. 95% of the people tell us they have improved morale. 33% improvement in sleep patterns. 44% reduction in medication usage, whether it's over the counter or prescription. 25% of the people say, I've stopped seeing my doctor for this issue because of the support I'm getting. That's not what we went in to do this for, but that data is coming back and saying we are having a bigger impact. And that's why total worker health became that mantra, is because I was looking at the data of our surveys and it was coming back, and it was all these other things that quote unquote weren't direct injury prevention, or they do relate, but we saw these other things that were permeating that employees were telling us and said, how do we pull this together? What's our umbrella? And it's the total worker health umbrella. So how do you start? You start through education, you start through listening, you start through engagement. And that's where you got to start.
Right. And I know that you have a really robust process, but it sounds like when you start working with a client and with their team members, you have a very set process so that you can identify where they're at, and then
Yes.
where that impact, how it progresses. I mean,
Yes.
what you're seeing. Could you describe that a little bit, Kevin? I think that would be fascinating for the audience.
So our process, our process, it depends on what service we're delivering, but even when we're doing an ergonomic assessment, in fact, it's interesting. Our ergonomic assessment business has really kind of grown significantly. And one of my people, he's gone into 3 wind turbines where he's had to climb 300 feet in the air on a straight ladder to go look at the ergonomic risks up in the capsule. But the reality of it is, where it started was on the ground when he was being introduced. Hey, Alex is here from Dorn, and he's going to do an ergonomic assessment. He stops and he says, "Tell me, guys, what's going on? Tell me what works, what doesn't work. Tell me what hurts, what doesn't hurt." It's asking questions. It's listening. And what his feedback came was by him not just climbing the ladder, doing the assessment, and telling people what he was doing, but by asking some leading questions and listening back, it allowed him to, one, get the support of the people who were there. It wasn't just corporate saying, we've hired Dorn, they're going to do their thing. 2, people opened up to him and said, hey, this is where let me show you where I think the risk is. People just took him to the risk. He didn't have to go discover it. Yeah. So it's that inquisitive. When we go on site with a new client, we have something we call immersion day. The first day is immersion. It's not getting in, doing our thing. It's listening. It's working with supervisors. Who are we? Why are we here? It's walking the floor and just talking to people and observing, letting them know we're here to help them. Yes, your company's paying for it and stuff like that, but you know what? We don't report individual results to the corporate or to your plant manager. We're here to help you, to support you. And so part of that is in that immersion, that assessment that we do, like Alex going up the turbine, by talking to the folks before he just climbed the ladder. People took him to the risk. So it's really that listening process that we do that really, I think, does differentiate it quite a bit, because an assessment is an assessment is an assessment, but how you approach it is important. A good example is we have something we call instinctive movement, which is our pre-shift conditioning, dynamic warm-up, whatever you want to call it, mobility exercises. Just don't call it stretch and flex. We don't use those terms. But excuse me, our program gets about a 96% retention of learned behavior 8 months after a single training. And people say, well, how? I said, it's because we engage. It's, even if we're teaching a class of 20, we teach our people to look. Is Joe in the back kind of staring at the ceiling? Is he looking at his watch? How do you engage with folks? How do you reach in and say, hey, Joe, why don't you come lead this one? Getting people to engage, getting people to work together as teammates. So you train the people and then say, okay, Sally, you work with Johnny, you show him. John, you work with Joan, you show her. And getting people more engaged with each other. One of the things that we're proud of is that we're able to get that sustainability because people take ownership.
Right.
And when you teach people, and the other thing we have, I talked about NIOSH's total worker health. That's our corporate philosophy. How do we implement it? We implement it through a tagline called empowerment through education and engagement. So the more that you can educate and engage, the more you empower people. And what ends up happening is people start looking out for each other. Hey, remember they taught us when you're going to lift that, you spread your legs and, a little bit further. They start looking out for each other, and that becomes infectious. And that's really the differentiator, because I'll give you a prime example. I tell prospects, hey, you got 400, 500 people in your plant. I need to be on site 16, maybe 18 hours a week. By the way, the competition, they want to put somebody in there 40 hours a week, maybe 80 if you got 2 shifts. So there's a difference. By us training supervisors to have ergonomic eyes, by us training them, train the trainer, by us listening, by us making that engaging people where they're at, where they start looking out for each other. Well, instead of 1 or 2 people from DORN being on site delivering support, we've now created an environment where there's 40, 50, 60 people, tentacles into the organization, identifying risk, creating support, maybe bringing us to where the issue is so that we don't have to discover it. It just becomes a cultural shift. And that's why I only need to be there 16, 18 hours a week, because I've got 30 other people that are out there looking for risk and identifying risk and fixing the small things that you don't need to pay us to do. So That is the implementation of total worker health that really gets to the crux of how do you get that started. And that's through that immersion, it's through conversation, it's through listening.
Well, that 96% retention after 8 months is incredibly impressive, because that is the shift that's occurred in the culture. Yes. So in organizations that, you're not currently working with, and from that high level, when you first maybe start a conversation, or you're, looking in, why is mental health and wellness in the workplace a common challenge, or is it a common challenge?
Well, it is a common challenge. Not only, first of all, it was there way before COVID.
Yeah.
So COVID just exacerbated it, spread it to more individuals, obviously, because millions and millions of people were affected, raised it up to the board level. I would probably say that you go back to board meetings now, the first agenda item is no longer COVID. And I get that. I understand the nature of things. So, but the reason it's there, when you think of, and this is another talk that I do, when you think about safety and wellness people, what their jobs were pre-COVID, regulatory compliance, ergonomic risk, and a little bit of environmental, like industrial hygienists, quality of air, stuff like that. Then COVID came on. You had infectious diseases. You had the impact of COVID, mental health and wellness. And then you had safety technology. So the job of a safety professional is much more complicated today than it was before. But specifically to your question of mental health and wellness, the data shows that there is a direct correlation. And I'm going to give you a very exact data point. The studies show that people who have chronic pain, and chronic pain is defined by I have that shoulder, neck, back, whatever issue for 12 weeks in a row, people who have chronic pain are 3 times as more likely to be depressed. And by the way, people who are depressed are 3 times as more likely to have chronic pain. Chronic pain is a symptom of some issue. Yes, it could be mental health driven, but it also creates ergonomic risk, because if I'm in chronic pain and then I go to lift that raw material, or I go to stretch where I need to stretch to grab that lever, or whatever I'm doing, I can create a catastrophic injury that all could be related. The chronic pain is the symptom, but it could be related to mental health issues. Not 100%, but there's a correlation between chronic pain and mental health issues, and the other way around, that people need to be aware of. So that's why it's important, and it is there. So what happens is, and we did a webinar a few years ago with a group out of Colorado called Minds and Associates, great EAP, a lot of psychologists on site, on their team and so forth. And one of the things they were talking about during the webinar was the impact on everybody around you, including your workmates, your family, and so forth, when you have an injury. Food insecurity, financial insecurity, mental health and wellness. And basically during that webinar, I kind of steered the conversation, said, hey, this goes beyond just when somebody's injured. It's really pre-injury, because that person in chronic pain could be 3 times more likely as being depressed, or depression causes chronic pain. So there relates to chronic pain, doesn't cause it per se. But the reality of it is it's there, and it's there pre-injury. So if you start addressing those issues pre-injury, because a lot of people address them post-injury, but if you address them pre-injury, you get you avoid the injuries, hopefully, but 2, you get the impact of changing the behaviors, changing the culture, and creating a sustainable shift. And so it's always been there, but probably not as recognized. Then COVID came along, but it's recognized today.
Okay, so that issue of the correlation between chronic pain and mental health, that's no longer a blind spot in the workplace. I mean, certainly not with your clients, but overall.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say it's no longer a blind spot. I think it is a blind spot. But that's why, one of my roles in DORN is I'm the evangelist, right? So whether it's internally the evangelist to the team, but externally in the marketplace, the evangelist. And that's why I speak 10 or 12 times a year. I will speak on mental health and wellness. I will speak on 4 to 5 generations working together. I will speak on whatever the topic is, the new role of EHS, those 6 tenets that I talked about. Because it's not, everybody isn't recognizing it. And I would say even large companies, we work, we'll talk to some very large companies, and their programs are in their infancy. You would think, they're $2 billion in revenue. They must have this really robust program. They have all these things. Yes. Do they have EAPs? Do they have, mental health support systems? But are they tying it together? No. So we also did a webinar, and this happened to be during COVID, where we brought 15 wellness directors together to talk about this. And there were about 4 or 5 who said, this is the first year I'm starting to share my data with the safety managers and with the safety directors and the global safety people. That's the total worker health concept. Yeah. The more you get all the constituents in a room to talk about it, you still might have your separate budgets and similar, but how do you umbrella this? How do you bring it together? We had a client that they had something that was called Live Well. That was their moniker within their organization, and they were hiring us. They said, you know what? We need to fall under Live Well. Don't bring us in as another safety program or injury prevention program, because then we're the program of the month or the new program this year or whatever. And coming in that way, we're successful. But really, if you put us under this Live Well umbrella, people will start thinking it. Again, you're reaching more people. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to engage with us. But what it means is, hey, this organization keeps continuously building upon this Live Well experience by bringing in either body mechanics training, deep tissue work, pain relief, whatever it is that we're doing that day or that week, that month, whatever. technology, desktop ergonomic technology, whatever it is, they're bringing in more stuff to help us live well. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kevin, for those who have tuned in and listening through, is there something that they can do today, tomorrow, this week, to take a step towards improving mental health and wellness in their workplace?
Excuse me. Sure. I think the first thing I always recommend is explore NIOSH's total worker health. Doesn't mean you need to go in and become certified and do everything they're structured, but just understand the concept. 2, start having the conversation in your monthly team meetings or your executive team meetings, whatever it is, whatever the vehicle is, start having those conversations. Start bringing educational material. Have a slot start talking about it. And if you feel uncomfortable being the one to deliver that, find some local resource to deliver that. I mean, we have some clients that say, hey, we're not ready to hire you to do all these programs, but you know what? We got all our safety people coming together. We'd love you to speak on either the 4 or 5 generations working there, the impact of mental health and wellness, some of the other topics we talk about. We want you to present that. And that's the way we're going to expose you, DORN, to that. So I'm not saying hire us. What I'm saying is find somebody local who can talk about it. But you got to start having the conversation and start building your coalition. It's like anything. You can't get anything through Congress unless you have a coalition of people who are willing to support your bill, move it through all the various committees and get it to the floor. It's the same in an organization. Having the concept and the great idea isn't going to go anywhere unless you start building that coalition. So if you're a safety professional, talk to your wellness person. If you're a wellness professional or HR person, talk to your safety person and start sharing. Learn about total worker health. Start having those minor discussions, small presentations in your quarterly management meetings so that you're exposing it with data, with information, education. And over time, you'll start seeing the conversation start changing. And so, that would be my advice, and start with, total worker health just to get an understanding of the concept, but really start having the conversations internally.
All right. Great advice, Kevin. So, is there anything else you wish I had asked you that I did not?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think, if people want to learn more, they can just reach out. I'm always glad. Like I said, I speak 10, 12 times a year. I am always happy just to speak to people. And it's not about selling. It's not about, hey, you need to become a client. Had a conversation with a group today that has 7,000 lawyers around the world. They have such a robust program. And I said, okay, if there's a gap and I see this gap here, let's talk about it. So, and again, I can steer them to a partner I have in Singapore that can help their Singapore office. So it's not about me. It's about, I like to educate. I'm the evangelist. So I like to talk about this stuff. So if anybody just wants to reach out and chat about it and how to get started, all those type of things, be glad to talk to them about it. Sure. Any PowerPoints I have, anything they want, they can have.
All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing how you can improve mental health and wellness in the workplace. And I know that our listeners are going to want to know about where they can connect with you and find out more about you.
Yeah, I think DORNCompanies.com. We just launched our brand new website, which talks about all these issues. We just launched it last week, or they can reach out directly at Kevin@DORNCompanies, plural.com.
All right. And we'll have all of Kevin's links in the content below for the post. And thank you so much, Kevin. This has been such an informative discussion. And thank you to every... Yes, I always appreciate having you on. Such great conversations. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We appreciate your being with us.
What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? I would love to hear about it. It's important to share the things you love. If you loved this episode, a 5-star review really helps keep the podcast coming to you regularly. Also, if you want to get more sales strategies to grow your business, make sure you subscribe right now. If you want to get results even faster, I invite you to download my sales strategy checklist at petite petitetoqueen.com/checklist. This has been Lynn Whitbeck, host of Claim Your Career Crown. I'll see you next time